Hey everybody, welcome to the Buy Dirt Podcast. My name's Trip Taylor, and I'm with Reedy Lanco, and we're here talking with Jessica and Laura about the TR Farmers Market. We're going to talk about the community they support, the farmers they support, local food, nutrition around local food, how people can get involved, where you can find a local market to source some of your own, produce, poultry, beef, and just a cool community to get involved in. Farmers market really feed more than just people growing food. It really supports a whole community, a whole ecosystem of vendors, arts and crafts, restaurants, and just provide a really cool aspect that's kind of a lost art. And we're going to talk with Jessica and Laura about what they're doing uniquely here in the upstate of South Carolina for Travelers Rest. And I really hope everybody enjoys it. If you enjoy the podcast, please give us a like. Please share it with your friends. Like the TR Farmers Market on Instagram. They're really involved there. And, I hope everybody enjoys what we have to say. Buy Dirt.
I love that mom and pop, a Wingstop shop with 10 different shades of hot. I love that football field and that wheeling dealing down at the used car lot. Yeah, there's folks that I don't talk to. Yeah, there's roads I don't go down. But I love my hometown cause it's OG. When I walk around, everybody knows me. It's like, hey, how you living? About as easy as a crick singing cricket. You don't get this in the city like you do out in the sticks. You can't get this.
Welcome, Jessica, who's the Business Development Director for Travelers Rest Farmers Market, and Laura Ross, who's the Treasurer for Travelers Rest Farmers Market, and also one of our colleagues, works at Reedy Lanco, and this is the Buy Dirt Podcast, brought to you by Reedy Lanco.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, we're really happy to be here. And I'm really glad we get to have Laura since she's on our board and works with you guys. She's the perfect go-between for our team tonight.
Good luck to all of you.
So tonight we're going to talk about, in this podcast, we always like to talk about different aspects, the land we live on, the community we live in, and the market all around us. And this is definitely part of the community. Travelers Rest is a really cool part of upstate South Carolina. It's special in a lot of different ways, but I think the growing community around fresh local food between the restaurants. We had a great event that TR Farmers Market put on where we had local produce, local poultry and hogs and all kinds of different meats that were prepared at a restaurant that I think is a big supporter for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
But
Topsoil.
Topsoil.
Rest,
there you go. So we're here to talk about that and really kind of try and support those community efforts because they're not easy. They take a lot of time to build a following, and we just kind of want to learn about, what's that been like in your job and what are the challenges. So that's kind of the conversation we hope to have.
Yeah. I think farmers markets, they don't just happen, as we talk about a lot in farmers market manager world. We were talking about earlier tonight that you don't know if it's a world until you're in it. And I entered that world 3 years ago when I went full time with the market. First graduated school and I just was looking for a social media job. It was down to an electrician or a farmer's market. And I was like, one of these is way easier to make Instagram posts for than the other. So I signed on and showed up, got an orange juice and a tomato sandwich on my first day at the farmer's market. But then 3 years later, I have come to understand a lot more about what farmers markets do for communities and how they connect farmers to the everyday Joe who's living in town, how they provide access to local makers and really also something I'm really passionate about is farmers market's ability to just be a landing place for the community. So we think a lot about the farmers, the community, and the small business owners that are part of our crew at the farmers market. But I'm really excited to kind of get into that with you guys more tonight and look at the connection between the land that the farmers sustain and the community that we get to bring together at the farmers market on Saturdays.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, one big topic that confronts a lot of the people that we work with is just agriculture in general in the Southeast, a lot of the country, but definitely in the Southeast where populations are growing, land is changing over, and some of that's good, and there's intelligent planning, and people need housing, and that's all really important. But you also got to have balance, and I have a good buddy who he comes from a generational farm, and he stopped a couple years ago, and I said, "Man, you love this. Why'd you stop farming?" He said, "Well, small family farms like ours are a thing of the past." And I said, "Tom, your family farm's 4,000 acres." And he said, "Yeah, but the combine that we buy to farm 4,000 acres is the same price as the combine that somebody buys to farm 15,000 acres." So you kind of have this challenge within farming, which you do in a lot of economies and different markets, is that you either go big and get scale, or you go niche and you go direct to consumer. But you got to have the outlet to do that, right? You got to have the forum, and that can happen online if you have really great marketing, or it can happen on Saturdays in a county or town square where you have all these different products and they kind of come together. So, that's one of the things that draws me to this is just the economics of being able to allow people to use far less land. One of the things that I learned at the dinner that we had was a lot of your farmers are, farming very small parcels of land. I mean, quarter acres, half acres, 1 acre. They get a share program where they get a couple acres, and it's a game changer for their production. So can you kind of talk to us about, capacity, maybe some of the programs that you guys work with farmers on capacity, and how small are some of these farms? We call them farms, right? But they're intensely managed, large gardens, but they're producing a lot of food for a lot of people.
Right. I know. So the Travelers Rest Farmers Market is 16 years old this year. It has about 39 farmers in the pool, which is a really large number of farmers. They're not all there every week, but they're throughout the season, they show up. Last year, I pulled the numbers, and I realized that the statistic for our farmers is that 48% of them farm on 2 acres or less. And so there are a lot of them are really like micro farming, or another word that you might hear as you get more into this sphere is regenerative farming. I think there's another podcast you guys will release with Kyle, who is a regenerative farmer at TR Farmers Market. He can tell you a lot more about that than I can, but basically it's that they're doing more with less, like you were talking about. We do have some like multi-generational farmers, so it's really cool to get to support them, but also a lot of them are who I affectionately call YouTube farmers. They're first generation, they're figuring it out, they're going on YouTube to learn if they have to, and so we love getting to support them at the farmers market. Some of them already own their own land, some of them are leasing, and so it's just really cool to get to kind of be an umbrella as a farmers market to help support them as they're starting out. And so I know I think this year we support just over 1,500 acres of upstate farmland. So a lot of that is a lot smaller farms, but we do have a couple like Hyder Farms is 400 or 500 acres. So we have some larger farms as well. But we're really excited to have them there of all types. Some of the regenerative, organic, no-till type farmers. Some of them are more old school, but they all bring different things to the table. And like you were saying, like when they come to the market on Saturdays, it's a place for everybody to connect and a place to support them as well. I love going to like elementary schools and telling them like, where do you get your groceries? And they say, they name off the big box stores that are in town, the grocery stores. And I was like, did you know there's another way to get groceries that we've actually been doing for thousands of years, and where a lot of people around the world still get their groceries this way? And so it's like we get to kind of bring this old thing new again, this ancient way of like we've always gotten our food this way, bring it back through the farmers market. So getting to do that has been a blast, and it's been fun to see. Really, our farmers market has grown since 2020 when the pandemic happened. I think people began to have a lot larger appreciation for being able to always access their food. They couldn't get caught overseas if it was grown down the block, And so our market has grown a lot since then. Like even from 2020, we were averaging like 65, 75 vendors per Saturday, and now we average 95 to 100 each Saturday. So it's cool to see a lot more small businesses growing and a lot more farmers being supported in that ecosystem at the farmers market.
That's awesome. And I think, one of the things that I saw during the pandemic, we own some land and we lease it to a cattle farmer. They do mainly dairy, but they run about 300 head of cattle on our property. And when the pandemic hit, I said, man, I want a cow. I would love to have a cow off our property. That'd bring me a lot of pride. I know, like, y'all have borne the sweat and the time and the effort, but we're part of it in providing the land. And they said, well, happy to do so, but it's a 1.5 year wait for processing.
Right.
So that's where also, like, having these viable markets, because it's not just, I think you said, 38, 39 farms, but then you have 100 some odd vendors, and I know those can be crafts and artists and all kinds of different disciplines, but there's also the community that needs for processing, whether it's the vegetables or the canning or the jams or the processing of meat. And that's a whole other part of it. And if you don't have a healthy community, that's one of the things that I think is incredibly valuable about farmers markets is you're giving a forum where there's enough economics to support local processing of those foods. And we're not, shipping things back and forth, picking it early. So it's not developing or not ripening on the vine. But, so one question, you kind of touched on this, that I had was, can somebody go to the TR farmers market when it's in season, right, and buy enough groceries to feed their family?
Yeah, I think there's not a lot of people who do strict grocery shopping at the market, but we definitely have produce, breads, meats, eggs, jams. I don't know. What do you get for your family on Saturday, Laura?
I don't know. So I'm there a lot at the front when people come in on Saturdays. And I've definitely had people say, like, when y'all aren't here, I don't eat. So I feel like that's just such a compliment to everything we're doing. And I mean, some of the ancillary items, probably not. But when it comes to kind of like the bulk of what you're cooking with, if you're on like a whole foods, nutrient dense diet, like, you can get it at the market, and especially right now. Yeah. I mean, I think this is the most vendors we've ever had. About 100. I mean, about 100 per week.
Yeah. I think 99, 100 is pretty typical for us.
And can you explain, like, the percentage of the food versus value add versus artisan? Yeah,
so we have an aim of having 50, 30, 20. So that's 50% farmers, 30% food vendors, and 20% artisans. It doesn't always look like that because we can't always find enough farmers to balance out. I think really this year was the first year we got to where, due to like market demand, we'd have to say, like, okay, some of these farmers can bring chicken, some of these can bring beef, that kind of thing. Because we're always looking at creating a healthy marketplace. So we can't control every aspect of the business, but we don't want to have too many bread vendors at first, like, for example. And so we kind of look at that. Anyways, this year was the first year we kind of tapped out on farmers at 39. So that's all stuff that we are thinking about, is the mix that we have there. I know, like, one of our favorite vendor stories that we like to tell is of a insurance adjuster who came to our market, who was cooking out of his very super DHEC approved garage, the garage. Great things starting garages, as you know. So he was cooking out of his garage, baking out of his garage, and then he came to the farmers market December 2021 and was with us for 1 year. And then he was able to open a storefront in the West Village of downtown Greenville, which is Rise Bakery. So if you're from the upstate, you might have heard of him now. But he really got to do that mostly through being at the farmers market. So in 1 year's time, we got to help someone go from, like, hobby to side gig to full time. Now he has like 9 employees. So I never realized before I was full time at the farmers market how important it is as an incubator of the local economy. And in the last 3 years since I started counting when I came on full time, I know that 14 of our vendors have gone on to open storefront businesses. And so that's really encouraging to us to get to watch them, like, graduate and you mentioned like the processing problem, which I feel like is so fascinating because like I'm going to say 95% of people in the upstate would have no idea that that's a problem around here for our ranchers, that they were facing like huge wait times or traveling 4 hours to get their cattle processed. But one of our farmers, Donald and Colleen Snow from Providence Farms, they kind of graduated, quotation marks, by they don't no longer come to the farmers market, but it's because they were able to open their own processing facility, which is like a huge investment.
Massive.
Like,
yeah. Sorry to cut you off.
Speak on that,
But for people that don't realize the regulatory processes that go into our food, and I'll just say, you know, there's a lot of good that it started at, and there's probably also a lot of bureaucracy that exists today. And its origins come from a long history of food risk, public health, but we've also had a long history of growing government and oversight, and just it's a balance like anything in life. And processing is an incredibly expensive thing to invest in, to be able to have USDA certified. You have production limits, so if you're trying to scale, you need a facility this size. Now all of a sudden your inspections go up, and you got to have people on site. I mean, it is incredibly difficult for someone to be able to bring a packaged meat to a storefront.
Right.
And I'll just say with packaged meat because I understand that better than others, but I'm sure there's also things with other food processing, and it's not for bad reasons. Like, we need to make sure that our food is safe. However, there is a balance, and sometimes we can find our farmers, you know, out of balance with that, where they don't have access to proper processing. And you know, one of the other things that, you know, just, and this is, you know, economics, but regenerative farming is phenomenal. But as you get into the processing, you need to go direct to consumer. You need to get into the repackaging type process, and the challenge becomes that now you're vertically integrating. And so as market prices, like, we're dealing with commodities, these are food products and, you know, really just sustenance that people are trading futures on. And so if the beef price falls substantially and you're vertically integrated, you just have a bigger shovel to dig that hole for, and it can collapse you. So your risk goes up. Your profit can go up exponentially in the good times, but in the bad times, when you have, you know, if you're making a penny or making $1 at every part of the economic food chain, is going really well. But if you start losing $1 at every one, that hole goes really fast. And that's the challenge with a lot of regenerative farming, is because they want to bring this product from their farm, grown in a more expensive way, because they don't have the factory farming, the mass production aspect of it. They're using a lot of times more land to raise that chicken or that cow, so that they can properly rotate the fields and properly fertilize them and do, you know, selective grazing and all those things. So using more land, which is getting more costly. But now all of a sudden, you know, if production costs go up or prices drop, it's a really, really scary thing to you know, tackle on. So like, this graduation process is probably some of the scariest things that your farmers face. Is your success is like, I'm ready to graduate, but hey, it's like going from middle school to high school.
That's real.
I'm all of a sudden in this big pool. Like, I was comfortable. I was an 8th grader, and now I'm in this huge pool of risk, and I don't understand anything that's going on. Everything around me is changing, and that graduation is crazy.
Yeah.
So Rise Bakery, I'll just give them a shout out. They are phenomenal.
Julian's the best.
I have not visited their store individually, but they are a supplier for, again, this is another restaurant that's this really cool part of Greenville. Anchorage serves their bread locally there in the West Village. One of my favorite restaurants. They use a lot of local ingredients. I don't know that they're as dedicated as maybe like a Topsoil is, but they definitely support Rise. And my wife's gluten-free, so I don't get a lot of bread in the house. But when we go to Anchorage, I get that bread plate to myself, and I get really excited. It's phenomenal. So anybody who hasn't been to Anchorage or Rise, West Greenville, highly recommend. Both are top-notch spots.
Laura, we got to go back to the Anchorage.
We do.
I think that would be a
So
good time.
good.
We do.
I think those restaurants are part of like a larger ecosystem that get to buy into local because of what the farmers market gets to do. And like Rise now comes back and participates in our fundraiser. So it's all kind of like feeding back into helping some of the really small businesses get going, which is awesome. Yeah, it's a good time. Okay, so on that with graduations, I think to the program that we got to start last year at the farmers market, which is the TR Farmers Fund, is what the market is doing to take a step further to help farms have a little bit of cushion and a little bit of more community support in what they're doing. Because like you're saying, like their margins are oftentimes very thin. Like sometimes it's easier for them to provide for their own families. They reach farther by coming to the market. And so we started a fund last year to provide in times of emergency, but also just with capacity building at their farms. And that's really what Reedy Land Co. got to buy into this year by being part of our farm to table dinner in the spring and then again in the fall. But what we got to do through that was in the first year, to be honest, the farmers market had never done anything like this. So I set a very modest goal. And we got 4 times that goal in the first year because we were really surprised at how excited the donors were to like give back to the farmers that they knew and met on Saturdays, which I think is all part of the proximity factor that makes markets great. But we got to support 4 projects. 2 of them were cold storage projects, and 2 of them were just more tools, like we called them crop expansion projects. So like washing their potatoes or having a larger tilling system. So all 4 of those farms are at our markets on Saturdays, and it was really fun to kind of give back to them. They're working on, I know I got pictures from Farm Girl Deliveries. I think they're in Inman. They're building their cold storage right now. And we're also fundraising for the next round of the Farmer Fund to give to some new projects next year. But we've been looking at crisis fund as well for when farms are flooded or fires happen, because part of being in nature, don't know when those things are going to happen. And so we were surprised at how much our farmers were actually asking for more of the day-to-day support than the big moment support, which I think is kind of just like the nature of how farmers are. They're very like, I'm going to get it done. If you know one, they're super resourceful. But we've been having a blast kind of just looking at how to support them better. The number one thing that they ask for beyond the grants that we're doing, the first thing that they want is for people to show up on Saturdays because that's their livelihood. I know our average vendor sales on Saturdays are a little over $800 a week. Some are more and some are less, but that's kind of, that's more significant, I think, than people realize with a market of our size, that people are spending that much money there each week. And that really supports our farmers, helping them get through their season. So that's the number one thing they want, which any of us can help with, is show up on Saturday. But secondly, we started that grant to kind of help them have bigger projects and reach farther. So we're really thankful to have Reedy Land Co. on in its second year to see where we'll go from here.
Yeah, that's awesome. One thing that you were telling me, we were eating dinner a little earlier, that kind of spurred a thought for me was you had a landowner at our dinner reach back out and say, hey, we've got some excess land that they might want to put into a lease with a farmer. I don't really know the exact situation, but I can tell from a landowner perspective, having good farming partners is incredibly valuable for maintaining your land, and then vice versa. A lot of farmers rely on these leases, because I look at leasing your land to a farmer as cost deference, not necessarily like income producing. You're really saying, hey, I want my land taken care of. I don't have the lifestyle, the resources, the know-how to do it. But have y'all done anything with like pooling or recruiting landowners for excess unused land to maybe like make things more available for lease to farmers?
That's not something we've gotten to do yet, but I think the Farmer Fund will help us with that. And we're definitely looking to bring in the larger community to support farmers like that. So I'm all about it. I think we should be on that.
I'd love to help with like just the messaging around that, because firsthand, I mean, we own a property down in Clinton, South Carolina, and that's where Tanner lives. And we couldn't own it without our farming partner. We've had it for about 5 years. I hope to have it for another 30. But without them, we couldn't maintain it. It would go feral. We lose some land value. Maintenance would become problematic, and so and that can be on a big scale. That's a pretty big property, but it's also on a small scale. These farmers, if they're doing their what they're doing, your property's going to be prettier. It's going to be more attractive. It's going to be more marketable. Whatever your goal is, if somebody's taking care of it, like so many things in life, it's going to be really valuable. So I'd love to kind of talk about that, because we try and help a lot of people look for 5, 10, 25 acre tracts, but a lot of them aren't farming, or gardening or anything. They just honestly want a little bit of space, but they've got land that it's the first time they're taking care of it.
Right.
And they could maybe learn a lot from some of these partners. So that could be something kind of cool.
I think that would be an excellent way to connect resources. And I think this connects with who I see at market on Saturdays. I think of the market as having 3 different audiences. There are some people who come to market who are just trying to eat. And we have programs to address that. We have food access programs that help people with like food stamps, SNAP EBT. They're learning about how to eat healthier, learning about what local food is like. There is a huge little portion of people that I like to affectionately call the latte crowd, because I was one before I started working here. Market's cute. It's something to do on Saturdays. Get some sourdough bread, get a latte, get some flowers, call it a day. That's a lot of people, and that's still actually a really important group of our supporters at the farmers market, because they're learning, they're in proximity with makers, they're learning about how to cook more healthy, learning about what's in season, and that's can be something casual for them for a long time. But I think of a third category, which is those who are really bought into the local food and regenerative farming movement. People like that are moving to the upstate constantly from all over the country. And they stop at the farmers market first because they're asking, how can I take good care of my land? How can I take care of my body and my family? How can I take good care of our health? They're people who have already know what's going on. And so we have opportunities for that for them through things like the Farmer Fund to give back. Honestly, I count our farmers in this as well, because they're the ones that are like, obviously, blood, sweat, and tears all week long. A lot of them, when they get the chance, want to leave their day job and go full-time into this, but they don't always have the opportunity. So I would love to have, and one thing that we started last year is our Sustainer Corps, which is a group of people who are interested in supporting the farmers market beyond Saturdays. And so there are that rung of people who are like, I'm bought in, I believe in what this is, I want to make my community better, I want to reach beyond just taking care of myself, and I want to help take care of my neighbor as well. And those people we want to see at the Farmer Fund dinners. We want to see them at Sustainer Corps. And I think the people that have extra land like that, that's where they fit in. They're not just thinking about like, oh, I'm pretty comfy here. They're looking to say, how can I buy in and have farmers partner, even if I'm not one. There's definitely a place for that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's something like let's continue to talk about and explore, because there's so many people who are that we're coming back to the land.
Yep.
That's what we're seeing, through farmers markets. So what we're seeing in our day-to-day job. It was a movement that was already happening, I think, and then the pandemic put fuel in the fire. But people are coming back to the land, and one of the things that I wanted to kind of just ask you about, like seasonality. So I'm somebody who I grew up with food allergies. My daughters have food allergies. Always struggled with weight, and what I've really kind of like realized, maybe even just in the last year, and a lot of it was driven by my daughters, was one, I want to be healthier, which I always kind of wanted, but nutrient dense food is different than calorically available food.
Right.
And I'll even go like, hey, eggs are healthy.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big difference in pasture raised eggs that are a deep rich orange color because they've
Yep.
been pecking and taking in all those micronutrients that we're not. They might have the same protein, but there's a lot of other factors that we don't even necessarily know about because we've been preached protein, cholesterol, and all those macro kind of nutrients. So, but then there's a whole other wave of it, and this is kind of my question is, seasonality of food. Like, what do you see? Like, what is the season that the market runs? What are the days of the week? What do you see like in terms of what people are like consuming, and then also there's that kind of like aspect of production. Like, do y'all have many canning or vendors who are doing jars and kind of collaborating to say, well, I've got okra. But okay, well, I don't have time to pickle it because I'm growing it and I got to move on to the next crop.
Right.
And then somebody who might actually have time to do enough canning to have a surplus to bring to the market.
Yeah. Man. So
Sorry.
I have to apologize to some of your listeners in advance because we're sending them on a journey. It's like, it's cute until then, like you're talking about, I with eggs, like that's one of my things. Like I kind of lose one product every year. I'm like, the farmer's market one is just so much better. But take it slow, just start with honey, start with eggs, something like that. Anyways, when it comes to seasonality, like the gift is that like, it's so good, so healthy, you're so wholesome, getting to support the community. And the limitation is it's not always available. So I'm not going to pretend I've never had like strawberries from the grocery store because they're actually not in season anymore here, right? But I think you just start paying attention more to what's in season. We do have farmers with us year round. Our market is weekly from May to October, and then it's monthly in the off season. So the off season being really end of October, November, December, January, February, March. That's about all they can handle is coming once a month. So in the upstate, we're not like Florida or California where we always have abundant production, but they work together. Some of them work on season extension methods that help them to have more. We allow them to co-op when they come to the market. So if one doesn't have a lot this week, someone else might. So that's stuff that we kind of reach towards. There's stuff like meat, bread, eggs that are always going to be in season. But as far as produce, that's what changes. So we just expanded a couple years ago. I think it was 2022. We expanded to being year-round. That was awesome. We didn't have a winter season before that. So that's big gains. I know another farmer's market started in Greenville last year, the Frosty Farmer's Market, and it had 75 vendors from the get-go. So I think that tells you something about how much people are interested in small businesses, and that she could get that many vendors together in her first year is awesome. But yeah, so that's when it comes to seasonality, we're at peak production in June, July. And then we always have some offerings, but it can kind of look different in the off season. Still something for everyone though. And we found good support but with our new winter market. This year, we also are introducing a Wednesday night market. So I've been in other places of the country, like California or New England, there's kind of different systems for farmers market where like every neighborhood has a small farmer's market of like 15 vendors, but you can almost always go find one. In the Southeast, especially in the upstate, it's like every city has one really big farmer's market that happens on the weekend. And so from visiting California and New England and a couple other places in the country, I really believe that our food system will be healthier when we move towards that model where we have small markets that happen every day of the week. And you can always go grab local at some point. And it kind of looks like that. I think this year has kind of really been a big step towards that as is, because we've got Tuesday night, I think that's Greer Farmers Market. Wednesday night, we have our midweek. Thursday is in Mullen. And then on the weekend, the TD downtown is a really, really large farmers market in the area. Ours happens on Saturdays. And there's a couple others as well, like Fountain Inn. But it's kind of starting to get to that place where if you're willing to travel 20, 25 minutes, you can get to a farmer's market most days of the week. I would love to see that grow because I kind of really believe in cyclical institution piece that the farmers market is. I know that's like kind of a crazy word to use with people who are really used to operating out the back of their truck, right? But like, just because it's not fancy doesn't mean it's not important to the community. I love that about farmers markets, and I hope I'm speaking to some of your listeners that might be inspired to start this in their neighborhoods. But with 5 tables and 5 tents, you can really be part of helping people in your neighborhood to have access to this food and creating an event and a place, like a capital P place for people to hang out and to know their neighbor. And so I'm passionate about seeing that grow in the Southeast. So that's kind of where we're at with seasonality. And let me know if I didn't answer some of your other questions.
No. I think there was a lot of dynamics to that. I mean, so one of the farmers that we spoke with on a previous podcast, he started in a community garden. Kyle,
Isn't that cool?
That's nuts.
Anybody can do that.
Like,
I mean, theoretically.
And now he's selling his goods to an incredible restaurant, and a really prospering part of the Southeast. I mean, that is a cool story. So, and that's one of the things, like, I talk about like why I want to do this. I mean, part of it's just fun, but like talking about community, like I think a lot of that, not to get on a soapbox, but we've lost a lot of that, and it goes into your nutrition. It goes into the economy, things that we pay attention to more maybe on, our news feeds or Instagram or whatever. But it really is also the people that you learn from and you connect with. And so that like grasp on some sense of community is it's intangible. It's priceless. I really don't know how to say, but like the derivative effects of it.
Yes.
Are immeasurable, and so that's something that I think is really cool about what you guys are doing and spending your time doing, is that there's all of these quantitative benefits, right? It's good for farmers economically. It's good for the upstate because we have really unique. We have this community. Broad scale community where some of our restaurants can thrive. I mean, we're very fortunate to be in the Southeast and in a market where proportionally the restaurants that we have in Greenville and the upstate are ridiculous for our size. Like you'd have to go to a major metropolitan, I call them NFL cities, like some of the top 20 or 30 cities in the country to match some of the cuisine that you can get in Greenville. But a lot of it's because of the access to local foods that we have. So, no, I mean it's really cool, and I would encourage anybody don't think you're doing something too small by being a community garden, because it can really grow, and just getting together with your friends and hanging out and something like this where you're having a conversation, you don't know what you're going to learn and go, oh, well, I'm going to try that out. That's cool. Kind of looking at some of the questions. I always struggle because I go down in rabbit holes, but then I'm like, well, there are questions I wanted to ask. I forgot to ask those. So have you found it challenging at all for, educating farmers to become vendors, or do they find you really easily?
Okay, I feel like those are 2 different questions. Farmers are awesome, maybe not awesome at emailing, but they are great to be vendors. We have had a blessing of having a lot of them, dozens at our market, and I know a lot of markets can struggle with that. But we're thankful for who we have at our market, and they do a great job of being consistent. So we appreciate them in that.
What is the average age range for vendors, or do you have some new farmers coming up that are younger, or maybe some old generational farmers? What's the age range look like?
Man, I love that you asked that, because I know our farmers are significantly younger than the national average. I wish I had this statistic off the top of the dome, but I do not.
Yeah.
I might have to let you Google that. I know that's gotten it's increased quite a bit. But a vast majority of our farmers, I would say, are younger. Maybe half. So which compared to the national averages is vast.
What would you say? How many are first generation?
Yeah, I would say, again, I'm gonna go with half.
That's what
as
I was
a
thinking.
good number of them are, and I know the USDA's definition of a beginning farmer is a farmer who's been farming 10 years or less, and so that's a lot of our farmers. And I was just reading about this. That's why I wish I knew the exact statistic, but I was just reading that it's a serious crisis of how many farmers are aging out versus how many are going into the profession.
Sure, yeah.
And so things like Kyle's story of starting in a community garden are so important and inspiring for those who feel like they don't have access to land yet and maybe don't have access to the programs that we're talking about, wishing we had in this podcast. But they have somewhere they can start.
Yeah.
And so we would love to see that more.
Yeah, I can really relate to whenever you said like the YouTube farmers. I feel like our generation is like the YouTube figure it out generation, and as more people just become knowledgeable and informed on like processed food and stuff, I think that a lot of our generation is going to move towards that farmers market, grow your own garden, natural kind of thing. Because I mean, I just know with my friends that I hang out with, like they're very health conscious, looking at the label, seeing where it's coming from, and stuff like the farmers market's great because you know it's locally grown
Right.
stuff. Coming from people in the community.
And they can tell you how to cook it. They can tell you, what it
Yeah.
goes best with. Asking questions at the farmer's market is a great thing to do. The farmer grew it, and that's a bonus for them. Is that they get to meet the people who are eating the food that they grew, and they have a very solitary job where they're in the field all week. And so being at market on Saturdays where they actually get to interface with people and talk to them about the produce is really big for them as well. So ask your farmer questions, show up on Saturdays. We do cooking demonstrations at our market. One time we did kohlrabi. Before I started working at the farmer's market, I did not know what kohlrabi was. Still doing my best to understand its essence. Anyways, kohlrabi, one of our farmers was cooking that and making it into a coleslaw, and she said her sales tripled because like you see that in the grocery store and you're like, I don't know what that is, but you see at the farmer's market, you could talk to the farmer about the simplest way to cook it.
Don't even know what kohlrabi is.
Excellent green. It's like comparable to like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a beautiful, almost like cross between like what, a collard green and
Yes.
I don't know.
Maybe I don't understand what kohlrabi is.
It's
I was thinking it was closer to like a.
It's some type
I'm
of
losing
green.
every
like,
farmer that's listening to this right now.
I know they're hating me right now. I've
but
bought
yeah,
it.
It's good.
It's
good
good.
stuff. Yeah, it's good.
So going back to the statistics, the average age of all U.S. farm producers, this is via Google, so I don't, and then actually it's via USDA National Ag Statistics. The average age is 58.1 years.
Wow.
And something that I think significant is that that's aging really quickly. 2022 versus 2017, the age for 65 years or older went from 22% to 39%. So, we're aging very quickly with farmers, and you don't want to lose that knowledge. I mean, me and Tanner are both hunters and fishermen, and I can tell you that if you don't know how to prepare wild game, it can be very off-putting. But if you do know how to prepare wild game, there's nothing that compares. And you have to know. I mean, if you're catching, even wild caught fish, you make sure it's cleaned properly, taking out the bloodline. Depending on how you're cleaning a deer, was it processed properly? Even a wild hog, selection of what pig you're going to shoot. Yep. So like, you take that and extrapolate it to the vegetables and the seasonality. The opportunity to talk to a farmer about how to prepare the food properly it's it's amazing that you can get that for free.
Yes.
It really is, like the amount of money that people would take to get lessons like that and how to prepare food and recipes and subscribe to all these different things. And it's just
Right.
like, no, just kind of show up and buy your food. And there's the guy
Yeah.
who grew it. And he's going to be incredibly passionate about like, well, you really, this one, we picked a little early or,
Yeah.
or, these you really want to cook tomorrow. And they're going to be opinionated about it, but they're probably going to be right too.
Yes, you're correct. Yeah, I think you're tapping into something, if I could get philosophical for 45 seconds or less.
Yeah.
Yes.
You guys understand this as hunters, and I think we would think farmers get it. But one of the things that I love about farmers markets is that it helps people move from being a consumer to being a creator themselves. And that's why they're so satisfying to shop at, or you feel so good about yourself after you leave, because I think you understand something in our society that's like, we're just being told to like get in this like mechanized system, consume this, consume that. And being at the farmer's market is the first really easy step you can take towards understanding where your food comes from, understanding how to provide, cook for yourself well, provide for your family. And then that's when I talked about those tiers earlier of those who are just eating, the latte crowd, and the really bought-in crowd. I'm seeing the farmer's market move people from one to the next.
That's cool.
I mean, that's what happened. I was maybe kind of still am, proud latteer, but I left my job a couple years ago to go full-time with this farmer's market because I believe in what it's doing. It's not just carrots and kale on a Saturday. It's a different way of local economy. It's a different way of family connections. And so for those who are just quotation marks, showing up to get their latte on a Saturday, it still matters because it's helping you move from like being in proximity with creators. And I think that's something that's really big for our society and health that we need. I know last year, the Surgeon General of the United States put out a health advisory that the United States is in an epidemic of loneliness. And it's something I talk about a lot. It's a statistic that there are actually more people living in single domicile living than ever before, as in totally alone, by themselves, apartments, houses, whatever. More people are living by themselves than have ever before. And so our city and civic squares really need what farmers markets bring. So yes, I just went like 40,000 feet with that. But talking to your farmer helps you cook well, but also helps you to have connection, and it helps them to have reason to keep going as well. So it's really important towards not just what happens on Saturdays, but towards the whole community. And so that's why I come on podcasts like this, because I really enjoy it.
Well, no, I'm gonna take it a little bit further.
Go ahead.
Just to give you the reprieve.
Yeah.
But I think if you think about it, I genuinely believe we spent a long time evolving as people, and there's DNA memory. There's a reason why, and maybe you guys have never done it, but if you've ever caught a fish, why is that so fun? Mm-hmm. It's so fun because in your DNA, in your brain, there's a lot of evolutionary mechanisms that say, hey, I'm about to provide for those in my tribe. I'm about to provide for those in my family, and participating in that is incredibly rewarding, and you can't get away from it. No one will ever convince me that you can get away from it, because I've just lived it, and I know the joy that I have for participating in providing for myself and my family, and in some of the loss that has to occur in feeding myself. Like, I mean, the reality is you're consuming an animal or a plant, and something, plant or animal, has given a loss to fuel you. But there's something in our evolutionary DNA, our blood memory, that says like, hey, fishing is fun. Hey, figuring out how to cook this is a rewarding act. And that kind of speaks to that loneliness, that draw for people for fulfillment. And not to say it's going to cure all your ails or your woes, but it can be fun. It's interesting. Yeah. You're going to learn something. You're going to meet some cool people. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, maybe you find a passion along the way. But yeah, I completely get what you're saying, that it's a void that is pervasive, I think, in communities, for individuals. and participating in, the barbarism that it takes to actually feed ourselves, whether it's, getting your hands in the dirt or, processing an animal or, whatever it might be.
That's
it's healthy to do.
Yep.
And then nutritionally it's healthy too. It's healthy emotionally, but it's also healthy nutritionally. And then it also, like, as you do it as a collective, oh wow, really cool things happen. People help people. I think it's so important to fuel. But yeah, so
You get it.
yeah.
He gets it.
Well, a lot of people will think me, oh, he's a hunter, he's kind of a redneck, blah blah blah, and it's like, well, yeah, but I've kind of experienced a side that a lot of people haven't, or maybe haven't been exposed to. That's maybe a little bit even further down the road of hunting for yourself and not being on what I call government meat.
Oh.
But so that everybody doesn't have to like race to join me, but you can start with a latte and some fresh cut flowers that smell really nice. And then, man, hey, go talk to that farmer about that tomato or that unique vegetable and ask him how to cook it. And it might be the most fun thing you do for the week, because the reality is otherwise you're answering emails. Right? Like, was your week really that rewarding answering emails? I mean, maybe you provided for your family in that way, but there's a lot of cool stuff you can do. So support farmers. Aging is an issue, but farmers markets really are starting to provide a forum for people, because you used to learn from your granddad. I know not as much my granddad, but my great uncle and my great aunt, they all kept gardens, and I learned from neighbors about cattle. You learn from your parents, and your dad still keeps a farm, a garden.
Yeah, we still do a garden, but we were talking about whenever we were eating, it seems like there was almost a generation that kind of lost that skill. Like their parents did it, but then they didn't really pick it up. And it seems like the more information we have about health and nutrients, more people are sort of going back to that. And you don't need a lot of land or a lot of resources necessarily to start your own garden.
Right.
That's something we talked about with Kyle. He started on, how big was his farm? Whenever he started, like a quarter acre, or
that's like his current farm. He's expanding pretty big now, but he was in a community garden. I mean, I think he maybe had like a couple of boxes.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And he's feeding his family off of that. And then he got to where he was, feeding his family and having some surplus at times on a quarter acre.
Yeah.
I mean, most people, if they really took and laid out their yard, and not everybody has the opportunity to do this, but if you laid out your yard, you could feed your family and some neighbors, a substantial amount of nutrition, out of your backyard, and you just wouldn't have to cut grass.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people are moving to do more of that kind of stuff, because while you may not need a lot of resources, I mean, farming and gardening is hard work regardless. And it's a lot like harvesting an animal. Like, you're going to have to put the work in, but you're going to get a reward at the end. I think it's very similar in that way. One's just an animal versus a plant. But as people become more knowledgeable about health and processed foods and the things you get off the aisle in the grocery mart, locally grown is clearly becoming more better. And I think people are moving towards that.
Well, one thing I did want to touch on, I got kind of two things, but one thing that you just said. So one challenge that I have with the grocery store today is I don't know if it's whitewashing or greenwashing of terms like organic, and these terms come out to differentiate, and then all of a sudden the big food producers realize, ooh, that has value, and we're just going to latch onto it. We're going to redefine what it is. The nice thing about the farmers market is, you don't have to deal with all the marketing, the glossy colored packaging. Like, you get to see it. You get to talk to the farmer. Like, hey, how did you raise it? And you're not guessing. Like, hormone free was a huge thing in the early 2000s around poultry. Yep. And so you were buying these hormone free chicken breasts in the grocery store, and the way they defined hormone free were based on growth hormones. The challenge was what the egg-laying farmers realized is, we can sell these retired hens at a premium They have smaller breasts, so logically they don't have growth hormones, just a little bit smaller breast, and we can sell them as hormone-free. Well, the problem was within the definition from FDA or USDA, whoever was defining the product and that definition of hormone-free, is they didn't include estrogen, which these hen-laying eggs were pumped full of estrogen. So you had all these, green moms wanting to feed their kids better, and they're feeding their poor daughters just like estrogen laden, hen breasts, just like time after time after time. And it was not hormone free. It was just free of growth hormones. And there was this, way too much estrogen in these chicken breasts, and then hormone free chicken tenders. And you go to Costco and like, hey, they're organic and blah blah, and all those terms happen. You don't have as much of that to deal with, and you can interview the local person at a farmer's market. And so, start with, in terms of health, shop around the perimeter of the grocery aisle. But the next step is get out of the grocery store and at least shop a little bit, locally and do a one meal at a time.
Yeah. Why is that the first time I'm hearing about the perimeter rule? I'm going to try that.
Oh, the perimeter? I knew about the perimeter.
Okay.
I never
stay out
go
of the
down the middle
aisles.
aisles.
The aisles are all the hyper processed stuff. Like,
Okay.
oh,
What's the
man.
perimeter?
I think I do that anyways, right? But the, fun fact, at the farmer's market, we don't have aisles. We do that on purpose. At our farmer's market, we have a big circle. It's called a Hestial format because it's like the hearth, or like coming around in a circle is more relational, because our farmer's market's more about being relational than efficient. So people come in, they're like, where's so-and-so? We're like, in the field. Go find them. And so then on their way, they're going to hopefully meet a neighbor and find their favorite vendor. But you'll notice that even in the setup of farmers market and human-centered spaces are different than like the grocery store is like an efficiency-centered space with aisles. And so you'll see that there too. But one thing that sets TR Farmers Market apart from some others is that we're a producer's market. So not every farmer's market has the rules that we have, but at our market, you cannot be a wholesaler or reseller. So even at like the state farmers market, you might see that more. If you're in South Carolina and you're running into like pineapples and bananas, like those don't grow here. Like think about that. At our farmers market, everything that is grown or sold has to be made or grown within 50 miles of the market. And so we have two notable exceptions to that, which is our seafood vendor, because the coast is more than 50 miles away. So Jason with Broadwater Shrimp goes down to Charleston every week and gets that. And then also our maple syrup vendor, because maple syrup doesn't come out of the trees here. So that's Paul Family Farms, and his dad is located in Pennsylvania, so he gets his syrup from it there. But those are our only two exceptions, because everyone else at the market is from within 50 miles of the market. So that's one thing your listeners can ask about their farmers market, is if it's a producer's market, and then kind of get to know where things are from and avoid a little bit of greenwashing that way too.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's a great differentiation to try and maintain and manage. I mean, the product you're putting out there.
Right.
That's really cool. So do you guys have any, obviously, or from a consumer standpoint, you guys are having a lot of success. Do y'all have a lot of growth goals? Is it doing more with the vendors you have? I mean, there's always that attraction to get bigger,
right?
But at what pace and what trade-offs? Like, talk about some of that, like, because you got the Wednesday market, that's a really cool effort, but
That's a pilot project for us. So it's our first market in a different location than Trailblazer Park, where our flagship market happens. I think one thing we're going to look at the end of this season, because we've had a lot of growth, we grew from about 85 to 9,500 vendors this year on average on Saturdays. We're going to look at vendor sales and see if our crowds have been supporting our vendors. And the other ways that we've grown in the past couple of years is expanding our Beyond Saturdays market programming. One that we do is young entrepreneurs, that we do that in partnership with a local business, Bridge City Coffee, where we have kiddos come in and do like Shark Tank style pitches. And so we're kind of helping the next generation get that creator over consumer mindset. And then two other major things that we do, the TR Farmers Fund, which started last year, which gives back to our farmers directly for capacity building or crisis, like we talked about earlier in the podcast. And then this year we just started food access. So our farmers market actually takes food stamps, which is awesome for those in the community who use food stamps, and then also awesome for our farmers. So it's kind of like the best program ever. It's very direct, like supporting those who would like to eat better and the farmers. So this year we introduced a program that if you spend $1 of your SNAP EBT food stamps at market, the market has privately fundraised to give $2 in addition to that. So that really helps. Everybody knows in this economy, like, $50, that's going to go farther at a grocery store than at the farmer's market. But through this program, we're kind of helping more people be able to shop at farmers markets and also supporting our farmers.
I'd love more information on that, how
Yeah.
I can personally support that. I
Yeah.
think that's a incredibly big bridge to cross, and but providing access to highly nutritional food for those who are disadvantaged is I mean, it's difficult, right? Because you got a lot of red tape. We talked about like the processing aspect, and now all of a sudden there's another layer of, there's all these, there's this demand, and money and funds in the marketplace that, if you're not in a supermarket, maybe you don't have the ability to process that. And so the fact that y'all have incentives on it is outstanding.
Yeah.
However, we'll talk about that offline, but that is that's just a really hard thing it's a hard thing to broach and to be able to raise money behind that and provide somebody access. Just call a spade. That same individual who's having trouble, buying this more nutrient dense food, that's not even the starting point. It's harder for them to get to the farmer's market.
Yeah.
So the person who's going to go pursue that and give you a food stamp, give them the biggest bang for their buck, because they are putting in the effort to do the best they can with every resource possible, because they've taken the bus, whatever. Now they're spending their food stamp. So give them as many blueberries and fresh strawberries and fresh
also,
shrimp. Whatever.
This year, under food stamps, you actually can buy plants that produce food. And I've been impressed with how many of our SNAP EBT users are buying plants for their family's garden. And I'm like, teach a man to fish, like classic. Like giving them plants for their gardens at home is helping their family eat healthy for the whole summer. And so I can't think of a better use of donations and food funds that way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That I didn't even think of that.
Yeah,
that's the next level. But,
it's the best.
But yeah, to be able to use those government funds, which I would be more free market enterprise.
I understand that perspective.
In my aspect, but it's like, okay, well, if the program's there, I'm not gonna fight it. Now let's make it work. And to speak, I totally understand that perspective. I know it's a difficult year in the economy for many people, and you're like, well, I could really use some free dollars for the farmer's market. But think too of the farmers it's supporting. A local farmer's market in Spartanburg, Hub City Farmers Market, I know that they processed upwards of $50,000 last year for SNAP EBT. Their market only has 40 vendors. And so if you think about that, what that means for those farmers as well, it's definitely a two birds, one stone. Everyone deserves to eat. Everyone deserves to eat well. So I'm glad that the food stamps is there. But beyond that, it's also really great for the farmers, which goes into our earlier conversations about the farmers market being covering for farmers and for a whole community of farming. So I think it's a really, really great program. I'm very excited about the growth we've seen in it this year. That's awesome. If nothing else I take away from this conversation, that's just like, we talked about a lot of cool things, but just that aspect is so dynamic. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, trying to look through my questions and see if I have missed anything. Laura, for somebody with so much pizzazz,
I've
you've
been so quiet,
sorry.
but I've just been kind of marveling at you and Jess, and I'm so proud of her.
Don't make me cry, Laura.
I know. Well, the reason I joined was truly because I guess I made a pretty significant lifestyle change several years ago. I started kind of educating myself on nutrient density that you mentioned, and was like, gosh, this goldfish diet isn't doing anything for me. And so I started kind of approaching food in terms of like, okay, what is this item providing me? And then, I don't know, from there, I mean, it just became a lifestyle change, and health problems that I had went away, and things changed for me, and things changed for my family. And so when I moved to Travelers Rest, I was like, this is my passion. This is the organization I want to get involved with. And the fact that Jess created this brainchild of, she calls it TRFM for All, which is the program where they give $2 for every $1 you spend in SNAP EBT, is why I joined. I think that's incredible. Just to teach people, like, if you don't, the Western diet isn't the only way. We can do so much better for you, and it's going to change your life. So, very proud. Very proud.
Yeah, we're thankful for people like Laura on our board, and Laura herself, of course, who our organization is so helped by our volunteers and our board. So it's a really cool gift to get to do it together.
That's awesome. So how can people find out, obviously we're winding down the season, right? I mean, we got a couple months to go, but it's August. Y'all run through weekly through October, and then go to monthly during the cold months. Talk about how people can find out more information, because we're gonna have a few people listen to podcasts, hopefully, and enjoy the conversation. But at the end of the day, what we want people to do is hopefully move, right? Come out, see you guys, meet farmers, meet vendors, buy a latte, maybe pick up that unique vegetable that you never dared. What was the one y'all talked about?
The kohlrabi.
Kohlrabi, yeah. Buy some kohlrabi. Figure out how in the world to cook this unique coleslaw, collard green,
Yes.
Dense green, nutritious
I'm going to get
vegetable.
in trouble for comparing it to a collard. I already know it.
It's going to be a scandal. I know. We'll never hear the end of it.
But hey, but at least people will be talking and they'll learn about y'all's
There you go.
y'all's EBT program and what they
Yeah.
can do. But how can people find more about TR's Farmers Market?
Yeah, I'd say we're most active on Instagram. So go find us there at TR Farmers Market. We have a website, travelersrestfarmersmarket.com. Of course, I would most like to meet you in person on Saturdays at the admin tent at Trailblazer Park in Travelers Rest, South Carolina, where we've been for 10 years now. We also have an event coming up where they could meet everyone at the table. Our farm to table dinner should be September 29th, a Sunday. I'm dropping the date here, but in late
I don't
September
know.
this year,
Yep.
we're going to have our next farm to table dinner. And so they can come and meet some of our farmers and support the Farmer Fund and meet all of us, have a great dinner at Blue Oak Horticulture, their farm. So we're really looking forward to that on-farm
Nice.
dinner.
Are we doing that as well?
100%.
That's the plan.
Awesome.
You're doing that as well.
Okay,
You're going to love
cool.
this
You're
one.
gonna
It's
be there.
outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Really
makes me
beautiful.
very happy to be outside.
But of course, every Saturday.
And the chef
come on
is
out.
incredible.
John Buck. Okay, so fun fact, John Buck is actually James Beard nominated for Best Chef Southeast. I think it was 2018. He used to be at Husk in downtown Greenville.
I
think
love
it was.
Husk.
Was it
Well,
in Greenville or Charleston?
I think Husk originated in Charleston. I feel like he was in Greenville with it. Anyways, you can find John at the market every Saturday at our Grits and Gravy Greenville tent. We love that.
I could do a
because-
whole podcast
Oh,
about this dish.
it's great.
It's the best shrimp and grits you've ever had in your life, and Josh Hester can speak to
You
that.
can confirm.
See, I have things to do on Saturday. I'm gonna be honest. And the facts that you just said, like grits and gravy, and we've
So
been talking
good.
about this.
R.I.P. to your chores.
I need to build a dog run. I need to be running my skid steer and doing a few things in the backyard. And I think just we're gonna have to go to the market.
That's right.
We're just gonna have to show up because it's too much to miss. But Jessica, can't thank you enough for joining us. This was a great conversation. Laura, wonderful color commentary.
Yes.
And Tanner, as always, thanks for being our producer and adding in. But everybody, if you have any questions, please reach out. And social media likes, follows, shares, reviews are so important to get the word out. Please, if anybody has the time, please do those things. One more time, TR Instagram is what?
Yeah, TR Farmers Market.
TR's Farmers Market. It's not difficult.
Keep it simple.
Yep. But yeah. So I'm Trip Taylor with Reedy Lanco, Buy Dirt Podcast, and thank you guys for listening.